Before watching this video, subscribe and get more information like this. Please consult with your doctor for any health concerns. Children who have experienced an initial traumatic event before they turn 11 years of age are 3 times more likely to develop psychological symptoms than children who experienced their first trauma as a teenager or as an adult later on. While a traumatic experience can damage a child if left unspoken about and untreated, the good news is that children are better able to cope with a traumatic event if they receive support from parents and other trusted adults they rely upon, such as family members, friends, teachers and so forth. Helping a child through a traumatic experience is important for building a child's resilience, ability to cope, so that they learn how to face what has happened, grieve over it, then put their life back together again and move forward. Help for children who have experienced a traumatic event should commence as soon as possible after the event has occurred. As such, it is important to identify signs of trauma in a child as well as to presume nothing from their silence, but to seek to ensure that they are both reassured and supported. Method 1. Understanding trauma. 1. Be aware of what can be considered a traumatic experience for a child. A traumatic experience is one that terrifies or shocks the child and may have felt life-threatening, whether real or perceived, and cause the child to feel extremely vulnerable. Potentially traumatizing events include natural disasters, vehicle accidents and other accidents, neglect, verbal, physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, rape, war, violent, intense bullying or victimization, compliance therapy, restraint, and seclusion, sometimes used on disabled children. 2. Recognizes that different people respond to trauma differently. If 2 children go through the same experience, they may have different symptoms or different severity of trauma. What is traumatizing to one child may simply be upsetting to another. 3. Consider signs of trauma in parents and other loved ones close to the child. A parent suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder can also be a trigger for a child to develop a traumatized response. A child may even react more strongly to trauma because adults around them have done so, especially parents because they're so attuned to them. Method 2. Noticing physical symptoms. 1. Watch for personality shifts. Compare how the child acts now to how the child acted before the trauma. If you see extreme behavior, or a noticeable change from their normal behavior, then something is probably wrong. A child may seem to develop a new personality, for example a confident girl turning into a shaky people pleaser overnight, or may switch between several strong moods. For example, a boy who flip-flops between withdrawn and aggressive. 2. Consider how easily the child becomes upset. A traumatized child may cry and whine over relatively small things that wouldn't have bothered them so much before. 3. Watch for regression. The child may revert to younger behavior, such as thumb-sucking and wetting the bed. This is especially common in cases of sexual abuse, but can be seen in other forms of trauma as well. Children with disabilities such as autism may experience regression more easily, which can make it harder to figure out whether the regression is related to trauma or not. 4. Notice signs of passivity and compliance. Traumatized children, especially those harmed by an adult, may attempt to appease adults or avoid angering them. You may notice avoidance of attention, complete compliance, and/or overachieving to turn into a perfect child. 5. Look for anger and aggression. Traumatized children may act out, become frustrated easily, and start throwing more temper tantrums. They may even become aggressive towards others. 6. Observe symptoms of illness, such as headaches, vomiting or fever. These symptoms may worsen when the child must do something related to the trauma, for example going to school after abuse at school, or when the child is stressed. Method 3. Noticing psychological symptoms. 1. Pay attention to changes in behavior. If your child acts differently than they used to before the event, it may mean that something is wrong. Look for an increase in anxiety-related behaviors. 2. Watch for clinging to people or objects. The child may feel lost without a person they trust, or a favorite object like a toy, blanket, or stuffed animal. A traumatized child may become extremely upset if this person or object is not with them, because they feel unsafe. 3. Notice nighttime fears. They may be afraid to sleep alone at night, with the light off, in their own room, or alone. They may have an increase in nightmares, night terrors, or bad dreams. 4. Notice if the child keeps asking if the event will reoccur. The child may ask questions about if it will happen again, or ask about taking steps to prevent it, such as repeatedly asking people to drive safely after a car accident. Some children may obsess over preventing the event in the future, such as constantly checking the smoke alarm after a house fire. This may turn into obsessive-compulsive disorder. 5. Consider how much the child trusts adults. Adults were not able to protect them in the past, so they might reason who can? And decide that nobody can keep them safe. They may not believe adults who try to assure them. A child who was abused by an adult may start fearing other adults. For example, a girl who was hurt by a tall, blonde man may be afraid of her tall, blonde uncle because he looks similar to the man who hurt her. 6. See if the child is afraid of certain places. For example, a child abused by a therapist may scream and cry if they see the therapy building, and may panic if they even hear the word therapy. Some children may be able to tolerate it with help from a loved one or security object, but be unable to bear being left there alone. 7. Watch for guilt or shame. The child may blame themselves for the traumatic event because of something they did, said, or thought. Fears are not always rational. The child may blame themselves for a situation in which they did nothing wrong, and could not have made things any better. This may lead to obsessive-compulsive behavior. For example, maybe a boy and his sister were playing in the dirt when the traumatic event happened, and now he feels the need to keep everyone perfectly clean and away from dirt. 8. Notice how the child interacts with other children. A traumatized child may feel alienated, and may be uncertain how to interact normally with others, or not interested. Or, they may want to talk about or replay the traumatic event, which could annoy or upset about children. 9. Pay attention if the child becomes startled more easily or afraid of sounds that didn't scare them before. A child may become afraid of wind, rain or sudden loud noises. 10. Notice fears that they report. The child may talk about worries that their family will not be safe, or will not have anywhere to live. A traumatized child may obsess over their family's safety and try to protect their family. 11. Watch for thoughts of self-harm or suicide. A suicidal child may start talking a lot about death, give away items, withdraw from social activities, and talk about what you will do after they are dead. If there was a death in the family, talking about death isn't always a sign of suicidality. Sometimes, it's just a sign that they're trying to understand death and mortality. Still, if it is happening a lot, it may be worth investigating if something is wrong. 12. Keep an eye out for signs of anxiety, depression, or fearlessness in the child. If you think there may be problems, take your child to a psychologist or psychiatrist. Method 4. Moving forward, 1. Be aware that even if a child does not display any or a few of these symptoms, that doesn't mean they're coping. A child can be impacted by a traumatic event but keep it bottled up inside out of a misguided need to be strong for mom or courageous for dad, etc. To assume that a child who has been part of a traumatic event needs to be cared for with extra attention to helping them through the event. They should have opportunities to talk about their feelings about the event, and they should also have opportunities to do fun things completely unrelated to it. Tell your child that they can come to you if they have fears, questions, or things they want to talk about. If your child does so, give them your full attention and validate their feelings. Providing emotional support can reduce your child's risk of developing trauma, or make the trauma less severe than it could have been. 3. Keep an eye out, even if signs of trauma don't show up right away. Some children may not give evidence for being upset for several weeks or even months. Avoid rushing a child to explore and express their feelings. It can take time for some children to process what has happened. 4. Seek help for signs of trauma as soon as possible. The responses, reactions and abilities of those immediately responsible for a child influence the child's ability to cope with a traumatic occurrence. 5. Have your child see a counselor or psychologist if they seem to be struggling to cope. While your love and support is very helpful, sometimes children need more than this to help them recover from terrifying events. Don't be afraid to seek help for your child. 6. Look into what type of therapy would be right for your child. The types of therapy likely to assist recovery for your child include psychotherapy, psychoanalysis, cognitive behavioral therapy, hypnotherapy and eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR. If the traumatic event happened to multiple family members, or if you think the family could use help, look into family therapy. 7. Don't try to cope alone. While it is only natural for you to want to try to be the support for your child, going it alone will make it harder on you, especially if you have also experienced the traumatic event. Take time to talk about what's going on with your loved ones, like your spouse and friends. Talking about your feelings can help you deal with them and feel less alone. Look into support groups if you or a loved one is going through something very difficult. If you're feeling overwhelmed, ask yourself what you need right now. Do you need a warm shower, a cup of coffee, a hug, 30 minutes with a good book? Take good care of yourself. 8. Encourage your child's interaction with others. Family members, friends, therapists, teachers, and others can all support your child and your family in coping with the aftermath of the traumatic event. You are not alone, and neither is your child. 9. Support your child's health. You can help a great deal by seeking to restore a routine as soon as possible, continuing to feed your child a nutritious diet and helping your child maintain planned exercise schedules that ensure connections with others of their own age and body movement for good health. Try to get your child moving, taking walks, going to the park, swimming, jumping on a trampoline, etc., at least once per day. 10. Be available for your child in the here and now. What does your child need right now? How can you support them today? Just like coping with the past is important, enjoying the present is important too. The owner of this channel does not share the opinion nor is responsible for what is expressed in this video. This information does not belong to the creator of this video production, as it was extracted from the source presented on the description here. This production was made only for information purposes and cannot be used as a medical advice, diagnosis or treatment. Subscribe and share this video with your friends on Facebook and Twitter to get more information like this. Thank you for watching our channel. See you next video.